G'day again, team, and we continue to work our way through our topics for the year. So continuing on with topic 2, training and evaluation of physical performance, and in particular this is 2.4. You might be sitting there going, oh, I think I've listened to a 2.4 previously, but this is another section within the 2.4, which is training principles and methods. In particular, as you can see by the slide there, we're looking at some more training principles. Alright, so training principles, as I've spoken about previously, the P being principles goes into our planning. Right? So when we sit down to map out a training program, we do the planning, these are the principles that we put into it. So in other words, the theory behind the prac, if you like. When designing a training program, these are some of the things that you should consider straight away. You should be looking at the energy demands of your particular activity. So as we've spoken about previously, you don't necessarily have to do your activity to get the same interplay of energy systems. We've used previous examples of using indoor soccer with its high intensity repeated efforts, but the long aerobic aspect of it, 20 minutes, we've used that as an example for training footballs because it is a very similar process in terms of short anaerobic bursts, but still the long 30 minutes of a quarter. Right. Fitness components, muscle groups. Right. These are other things that we can consider. Right. So as long as the activities are targeting one or two of these, we can deem them to be relevant and necessary for our training program. The other thing we need to consider is fitness assessment or fitness testing, pre and post. There are a lot of coaches that will do fitness testing. Now, some do it just because, they think they've got to do it. Oh, we're going to take skin folds here. Okay, no worries. But if you don't take skin folds again later in the year, what was the point in taking skin folds in the first place? Okay. The beep test is one that normally gets thrown around where coaches might have a week off and they say, oh, we're going to do the beep test. Well, what's the point in doing the beep test for 1 week if we actually don't have anything to compare it with? So pre and post testing, and also the length. You've got to consider how long do we want this training program to last. It might be you're just trying to train for the City to Bay, and it might only be a 4-week training program. That's fine. It might be you're training for a longer marathon, and it needs to be, a 12-week training program. Doesn't necessarily matter the answer, but we do need to consider all these things before we go into planning a training program. Now, our season is broken up into 3 phases. Preparatory phase, or pre-season, in-season, or our comp, transition or off-season. Now, I've used 2 terms there to describe each of them because quite often either term could be used. So, for example, in an exam question it might say, name 3 components of the preparatory phase. Now, some of you are going to go, oh geez, I don't know what that is. Prepare. Prepare generally means, as you can sort of see with pre-season, before getting ready. Okay. In season generally suggests, hey, that's when the competition is happening. And transition, transition phase is certainly a term that's used a lot more than off-season now. Okay, because transition tends to suggest you're moving between. Off-season tends to suggest you've got time off. So as much as it's just a subtle word change, transition means we're moving towards and we want to try and keep some fitness, whereas off-season generally suggests, hey, take time off, do what you want. But we'll get into that a little bit more. Pre-season, generally 4 to 8 weeks. Now, you can ask the question, why would we generally have a pre-season 4 to 8 weeks? Why that time period? And some of you might have already come up with the answer of, well, in previous slides we've looked at chronic adaptations to training. So in other words, how long does it take to get aerobic benefits from a training program? And it's going to be that 6 to 8 weeks, which is why pre-seasons will generally be 4 to 8 weeks. Now you might hear of some teams that have 15 weeks of pre-season. Well, chances are the fitness you're going to gain in 15 weeks is going to probably be very similar to the fitness you'd gain in 8 weeks. So you sort of beg the question of why would we do an extra 6, 7, 8 weeks? Okay, but pre-season. The general goal is to build fitness and develop techniques. Right? That is the main goal. Build aerobic fitness and develop some techniques. We can then further break pre-season into two sections, general preparation or specific preparation. So general preparation is, as the name suggests, just very general, where we're actually trying to work on basically just our aerobic fitness, getting fit. Right? Specific preparation, that'll fall into specific game-related training and usually more intense activities. So for example, if we're looking at a normal pre-season program, the first 4 weeks might focus more on, as it says here, aerobic training, maybe longer sub-max runs, and just a bit of generic skill work. Then the next 3 or 4 weeks of pre-season might be more about, okay, we've got our aerobic fitness, let's try and get a little bit more intensity, those high intensity repeated efforts. Let's try and work on specific skills. But the main focus of pre-season is, yes, to build aerobic fitness and then to build our skills. Okay, that's our pre-season. Competition phase. Now, depending on the length of your season, but generally 4 to 6 months. Once we hit competition phase, we should be at optimum fitness and skills. In other words, we've spent the 6 to 8 weeks in pre-season. We have developed our fitness, we have developed our skills, so it is now about maintaining them. Right? So we're just maintaining our fitness, maintaining our skills. When we get to competition phase, it's generally a weekly cycle. So the weekly cycle, if we have a look at these other dot points, post-competition recovery, early sessions more intense, later in the week tapering, peak for game day. So that all refers to our weekly cycle. So if we look at an AFL club, I use AFL as an example a lot, but that's just because in our country, it's the sport that has the most money behind it. Okay? So a general weekly cycle would be, let's say AFL club plays on a Saturday. They then go into post-competition recovery. In other words, Saturday night, Sunday morning, they do recovery. Right? Monday, they might get together, watch the video, do a little bit of light training. Tuesday, Wednesday will be, earlier in the week, the more intense sessions. So they'll have the longer 1.5 to 2 hour sessions on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and they're definitely more intense. And then as we get later in the week, Thursday to Friday, they taper. Now taper is reducing the training load. So in other words, dropping off the training. So Tuesday, Wednesday, we spoke about doing 1.5 to 2 hours. We then get to Thursday, Friday, it might only be 45 minutes. The reason they're doing that is reducing the training so that we can peak for game day. In other words, a little short session Friday, rest up Friday afternoon, wake up Saturday morning, hey, we should be feeling fresh for game day. So that's what our competition phase is mainly about, those weekly cycles and making sure that we are right for game day. Right? So competition phase is all about weekly cycles, maintaining fitness and skills that have been built in pre-season. Definitions that I've just spoken about. Tapering, decrease in training levels, generally over weeks prior to a major event or competition. Now it says generally over weeks. That's because most competitions have games week to week. However, tapering can occur over a matter of months. If you look at Olympians, 4 years between Olympics, they will taper for different events throughout. Now I'll get back to that in just a moment because I'll just tie up peaking. So peaking is the planning of training to enable an athlete to reach their optimum state of readiness. Right? So in other words, if I pull out coloured pen here, whatever we're going to go with, all right, what Olympians will do is go, okay, I want to peak here at the Olympics. I then want to drop off. I want to peak for the Com Games. I want to drop off. I want to peak for the World Champs. I want to drop off, and then I want to be, I'm doing well here, peak for my next lot of Olympics. Right? So that's what they want to be at in terms of their performance. So they go, I want to peak for all those different points. I want to peak for, I want to change my pen colour. I want to peak for the Olympics, Com Games, World Champs, and the Olympics. So the tapering is what their training load would look like. In other words, we've dropped off our training load. Now that at the moment we've got no comp, our training load is going to be heavy. It might be high intensity, it might be long sessions, all right? Then as we come towards I think that was the Com Games, we're going to drop off so that we're fresh. Then as that finishes, we're going to pick up our training. Then we're going to drop off for the World Champs. Then we're going to pick up our training, then we're going to drop it off for the Olympics. So you can see how the two intertwine. All right? So tapering is reducing the training load. Peaking is making sure that we are fresh, ready to go. Off-season. As I said, they've now termed it transition phase. Right? The main aspect of this is physical and psychological rest. So in other words, we've been playing all year, we're a little bit over it. Go away, get yourself fresh, both in the mind and the body. The other thing is maintain fitness through recreational means. So if you're a footballer and you enjoy playing basketball, go play basketball or go play cricket. All right, there are some of these weird people in this world, and I'll put my hand up as one of them, that just enjoy running. So if you're one of those people, keep your running up. Right, but what they're wanting to do is they're wanting you to maintain fitness, but in a recreational means. So that when you come back, yes, you've still got fitness, but then you're also relaxed in the mind. Injuries need to be rested, goes without saying, and diet monitored. It's all well and good to say, well, hang on, I haven't been able to eat hot chips all year, let's have them every day. Well, you're probably going to come back about 5 kilos heavier. Suddenly, hey, the fitness isn't going to be there. I said it's now termed transition period. It's about minimising the harm. Right. Back in the good old days, there were lots of AFL footballers in the 80s and 90s that would come back after the summer and would be that 6 kilos heavier. And then they would spend all of pre-season dropping that off, and by the time the season started, they were just about back to where they started. Whereas now, as AFL's become more professional, it's more a case of the blokes in their transition period are still exercising. So when they come back to pre-season, they're basically in as good as nick as when they started the year. So instead of spending 6 weeks to get back to where they were, they can spend 6 weeks to get slightly better. Right. Off-season, well, it depends on how it goes. You look at AFL clubs, a lot of them will start pre-season with the younger blokes in November. Now, the grand final might only be the last weekend September or first weekend in October. So potentially they've only got 6 weeks off. Now, training cycles. There are these things that are referred to as macro and micro cycles. Now, in terms of you ask, what are they and how are they going to be incorporated into an exam? Generally things like macro and micro cycles, they would actually describe it in the actual question. They've undertaken a macro cycle. Right? And what a macro cycle is, it's usually a little focus within the training year. So we're in the competition phase, and what the fitness guru might do in the development of the training program is go, okay, we're going to have a 4-week macro cycle where they focus on something specific. So it might be the incorporation of possibly a lot more flexibility work. We're getting to a point of the year where injuries are starting to build up, so at that point we're going to include a flexibility macro cycle. Right? So we're going to include 5 extra sessions of flexibility a week. All right? So a macro cycle is quite simply that, just a block where we are focusing on something. It does break the year up a bit. All right? So we might have a flexibility one there, and in that time we've reduced our weights. Right? So that way we're not doing weights all year. Whereas a microcycle is, if you like, a normal week in your particular sport. So I gave the example of an AFL week before where you play on the Saturday, recover Sunday, Monday, more intense session Tuesday, Wednesday, lighter session Thursday, Friday, play again. Okay? So a microcycle represents a basic training unit, in other words, a normal week. Now that's for AFL. If you then start getting into some of these American sports, your NBA, your NHL, so your basketball and your ice hockey, suddenly it gets a little bit more confusing there where they can be playing 3 or 4 games a week. Okay, so that's where they've got to really manage these cycles. But as I said, macro cycle is quite simply something we're focusing on for a 4 to 6 week period within the training program, and a micro cycle is just a basic representation of a normal week of our training program. Right? So there are some more components we need to consider when looking at training programs and developing them. And as I said, we need to sit down and map all these things out, what it is that we actually want to get out of the training program. And once we've had a consideration of all that, we can develop some good training programs. Right, so that's all for now, team. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.